All right, welcome into episode 100. It's just Jeff today. I wanted to do this episode solo because I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do for the 100th episode. And I'm excited that I got to this point, but I wanted to come on here and, like I did the first episode, just talk to you, just me. So this is just me. And I'm going to maybe be more honest than I've been in any episode besides the one from the mess. And I think that this is going to have somewhat similar vibes. But I tried to think about what is maybe the single most important thing that I wanted to share and the thing that I've been learning that I hope sums up this podcast thus far. And also hopefully sets the direction for the next 100 episodes. And I haven't been able to clarify in my head exactly what that is for several weeks. But this morning I woke up at 1:45 with my daughter screaming. She wasn't really screaming, but she was just crying. She was upset. She was having a hard time getting herself to settle. And from the moment that I went in there, I have been awake. I couldn't get myself to fall back asleep. I also had a really hard time falling asleep last night. I laid in bed for a long time last night trying to get myself to go to sleep. And that's not typical of me. I'm typically able to fall asleep within 10 or 15 minutes. And if you've listened to the episode about sleep, the one about sleep, I talk about how important it is to be able to fall asleep right away. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, to try to reset. But I laid there and I tried to fall asleep for well over an hour. And finally, I just admitted it's not going to happen. And I got up and I started the day at 3:00 in the morning. And as I record this, it is 8:00 in the morning, 5 hours into my day. And I have a full day ahead of me. But the thing that was running through my head all night, last night, and this morning is a theme that I have known for a long time, but had always thought that I was doing relatively well with. And I think there's some areas where I have been, but yesterday and the last couple of weeks have really brought to light some of the ways that I've really fallen short with this. And I wanted to say it almost as a way of verbally processing with you all. And hopefully there's some value in it for you. This is a little bit of my recorded journal because I don't tend to write very well. Not very well, but I don't do a good job sitting down to write for myself because I tend to want to be perfect when I write. Even if I'm just journaling, I tend to want to articulate it really well versus if I'm verbally processing, I can stumble a bit and be okay. So this is a theme. I'm not going to beat around it anymore. And it's one of, I've said it to all of you on this podcast before, but I'll remind you that I am a believer, follower of Jesus, Christian, however you want to call it. And this has been a little bit of a life verse for me since becoming a Christian over 15 years ago, which is from Galatians. It says, "Do not be deceived. God," I don't even need to read it. "Do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. Every man reaps what he sows." Every man reaps what he sows. And I've touched on this topic a lot, I think, in different ways on this podcast and with my content, that we are the product of what we do most often. that there's a cost to everything and we get to decide the cost, but we can't be upset with the results that we get from the decisions that we make. We can't be upset from the results that we don't get from the work that we don't do. And oftentimes I frame that through the lens of health and fitness, but I think it certainly permeates other things. And again, I think that oftentimes you can think about people who are on podcasts. If you listen to podcasts, watch people on social media, it's easy to think that they have it together. And to some degree, I come on here and kind of need to, I don't know if act like is the right word, but the goal of this podcast is to be helpful, is to be knowledge giving, is to be empowering, is to be challenging, and is to call you, the listener, to action, to do the thing that maybe you feel like you need to do for the outcome that you long to achieve. And so in that within that context, though, it's important to remember that I am not in any way, shape, or form flawless in any of this. I am not, don't have it all together. And I think it's a little bit like somebody, if you've ever been into a church, or certainly if you've ever preached or taught a lesson from Scripture, as I have at times, it's difficult to do something like that, because as you say something, it is oftentimes the result of having to look hard in the mirror and recognizing the ways in which, I'm just going to use the first person, I fall short. Anytime I'm coming on here to do something, to talk about something, anytime I've ever taught a lesson, anytime I even talk to my kids, I recognize the ways in which I fall short. For instance, my kids get upset or frustrated or whatever it is, and they start screaming or whatever it is. And so I'm trying to tell them that, like, hey, when you get frustrated, like, it's okay to feel frustrated, but we're not going to yell at anybody. We're not going to do anything. But then yesterday morning, my daughter, who I love very much, but is in a phase right now where she'll go nonverbal and just kind of out of nowhere, without really an understanding of what it is that upset her, she'll just start screaming like in your face, and you can't really get through to her, and it'll happen for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I got to a point of frustration, and I yelled back yesterday. And I recognize in that moment I have no leg to stand on when I tell my kids how they ought to act, because they look at my actions and they're like, well, you do it, so why can't we do it? And I feel it immediately. As soon as I do it, I feel immediately convicted the ways in which I fall short. And that holds true throughout my content. It holds true throughout my podcasts here. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to come on and challenge or call people, you all, to the things that are for our good. I want to try to push all of us toward the things that I know are best for us. But also, I want to make sure that you know I do not have all of this together by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of what I share is things that I've tried, things that I've talked through with clients, or things that I know intellectually to be true, even if they're hard practically for me to do. And there are certain things that are very difficult for me to do. And so I'm going to give a few examples in which I have become convicted over the last couple of weeks where I have not been sowing the seeds that I would like, and therefore now I am reaping the negative consequences of the decisions that I've made. My hope for doing this is not to get empathy. It's not to hopefully discredit myself as a voice of authority with you, but rather to show that perfection doesn't exist, that we are all struggling. The areas in which we struggle vary person to person and situation to situation. But as I coach a lot of coaches on their businesses, it's become painfully obvious to me that the human condition is the human condition. Because these coaches are incredibly disciplined and consistent with their workout routines or their nutrition or whatever it is. But getting them to do something simple for their business is like pulling teeth. The human condition is the human condition, which is oftentimes we struggle to do the things that we know we need to do. But I'm saying this today as a reminder for me and also for you that the decisions that we make have a tail on them, often long beyond even the perspective that we have. And so while right now I am recognizing that some of the seeds that I have sown in the last several years are bringing up bad fruit right now, and I might think that this is the worst of it. I might have no idea. It might be worse than it currently is. And certainly if I do not do anything about it. The other reason that I'm saying it is also for me to maybe identify these things as opportunities to shift now, because we can easily stay stuck. And that's how I felt for the last 24 hours at least, is stuck. And so I think that oftentimes verbalizing it can help move us past the stuck. So I'll start kind of on a very, high level, if that makes any sense, surface level, and we'll see how deep I'm willing to go as I go through this, because there have been several examples. But I'll start with the area of topic of conversation, which is often on this podcast. My training, my exercise has been very inconsistent for months now. I've had spurts of somewhat decent consistency, but I haven't been really consistent with my working out in probably well over a year. It's been at least 6 months since I've been decently consistent. And what I mean by that is there have been some weeks where I've gotten one or no workouts in. And I do this for a living. And I spend a lot of time talking to other people about how to get their workouts in, how to prioritize themselves. And there's a few reasons, I think, why that maybe we'll get into later. But just the quick hit on it, and maybe this is one that I'm trying to speak into existence being different, which is I sowed bad seeds of not working out consistently. And so, as you would imagine, I'm reaping the consequences of that. I'm reaping the fruit of that right now. And so this is the first week, and it's Tuesday right now, but if I go back to last week, where I have gotten 3 workouts in on the days that I planned to do them, and I went beginning to end for the most part on those workouts, and I didn't opt out early, and I actually challenged myself relatively. And I lost a good amount of strength. I've lost a good amount of strength, and I think it'll come back relatively quickly. But certainly not all the way to where it was. But I've lost a lot of strength. I've lost a lot of mobility, lost a lot of endurance, and things are harder than they used to be because I have done it. And I've seen that even show up in my day-to-day life, which is where it matters to me more than like in the gym. Like I don't really care too much about how much weight I can lift, though that is certainly it was a bit alarming to see how much of a drop off there has been with how much weight I can lift. But even just day-to-day things, I'm like, why is this hard for me? Something as simple as like the holding up my cast iron skillet that was full of a lot of food to like tip it and dump it into something. My like grip strength was like, man, I don't feel as strong to do that as I used to. And it was really frustrating for me and disheartening because this has been part of my identity for a long time. Well over 9 years now. I have been very consistent with my exercise, aside from the last, 6 months to a year. And fitness is my profession. I help people with it, but it's also something that I identify with. Like I am strong. I am capable. And I have noticed the drop off in that. And what has frustrated me about it is I have nobody to blame but myself. Like it would be easy to be, my work has been significantly busier for the last 9 to 12 months than it had been previously. Significantly busier. But that's not an excuse. It's a reason. It's not an excuse. But also, there was plenty of time if I had just made the time. If I had made the time, if I had prioritized it, it wouldn't have gotten to the point that it did. And it wouldn't have gotten to the point where it was as hard to get back into it. And I'm hoping that this week is a sign of things to come, because I really didn't want to work out this morning because I've been up for hours and I have a lot of work to do today because yesterday was Memorial Day. And so I didn't have a Monday. And so I'm feeling behind, and I have a bunch of yard work that I want to do, which we'll talk about in a second. But I was just like, I'm just going to do my workout. And I do feel better. But I also am mourning the fact that I've gotten to this point. Mourning is maybe too. I'm lamenting the fact that I've gotten to this point, because I'm reaping what I sowed for the last year. And so there's not a lot to do when you've gotten to the point where you're like, dang it, I don't like where I'm here, other than to try to sow new seed. So this leads us into the next point. And this is going to sound maybe silly, but this is actually like a big thing for me. And you'll hear a common thread through this, which is stewardship, which is a word that gets kind of thrown around, but managing the things that I've been given. And I've been given a lot. Like God has given me a lot to manage. And I'm blessed by that. One of them being my health, the next one being my house. Then my kids and my relationships, and I'll get into those in a minute. I already touched a little bit on my kids. But my house, speaking of sowing seeds, so I posted a video the other day about how my yard has been destroyed by grubs. We had grubs, and then we had crows come and just rip the grass up because they were going after the grubs. And this started like last fall. It actually started prior to that, but it didn't get to the point where it was a real issue. But last fall it started, and I could have nipped it in the bud, but I didn't. And again, lots of excuses. The fall's super busy. Megan teaches, and it's her busiest time for photography. I was ramping up with my business as well as doing the online trainer mentorship. That was when I started taking on students with the online trainer mentorship. So that was busy, plus the kids and all of that. And so it just kind of got pushed to the back burner. And again, it's not as if there wasn't time to do it. I just didn't take the time to do it. And it would have been difficult, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been done to handle it. And now I'm in a position where 2/3 of my front lawn is just dirt. And so now, like my strength, I have to climb out of the hole that I have dug for myself by not taking care of it before. Because if I had just taken care of it before, done anything, any of the 50 things that I could have done from last fall to now, end of May, I would be in a much different position than I am now. But I'm going to have to take hours. I got quotes for $3,000 for different landscaping companies to come out and fix this. Like, I'm going to have, and I'm not going to pay $3,000 for a landscaping company to do it. And I think that there's, the time and money sort of thing, but I'm just like, it's a point of intention for me, which is I screwed this up. I didn't take care of the thing that has been entrusted to me. Because we bought this house 3.5 years ago, and the yard was gorgeous. It was one of the things that we loved about it. And I have not taken good care of the yard. And now would like to be able to take our kids out, and they can go out and they can still play, but it's a reminder, it's a visual reminder of the neglect. And I think that there's certainly parallels for us in our fitness journey where we look in the mirror and we maybe don't feel best, and we get frustrated with our past selves for the decisions that we made. And I look at my front lawn and I'm mad at my past self. I'm mad at him because he could have done something. I could have done something, but I didn't. I chose not to. I abdicated responsibility. My front door has a storm door, like a glass door. And sometimes that doesn't latch all the way, and the wind blows it open. And there's been a couple times where it's blown it open so hard and fast that it has hit the railing on our front steps. And it hit it so many times. Our railing's made out of wood. It literally knocked the railing off. This happened sometime this winter, like December or something like that. I fixed that railing, not even really fully fixed it, last week. I had a railing hanging half off my the front of my house, for 6+ months. And I'm ashamed about that. Because you know how much time it took me to make it just functional? It's not I need to replace the whole thing. It's more like I can't fix it. It's been wrecked. I have to replace the whole thing, but to make it not be hanging off my house, it took me 10 minutes. And I didn't take 10 minutes for 6 months. And actually, because I didn't fix it the first time, then the next time it hit it, it got even worse. And the next time it hit it, it got even worse. And so then it got to the point where now I do have to replace the whole thing. If I had fixed it probably the first time that it got knocked, I might not have to replace the whole thing. If I had fixed the grub situation, I might not have to be planting all new grass everywhere. And fertilizing and all of this stuff that I have no idea how to do. But again, at this point, there is nothing that I can do. Lamenting it doesn't do me any good. Being mad at myself doesn't do me any good. I just have to plant new seeds. I have to sow new seeds. But even before that, and taking this analogy, I have to score up the earth. I have to rake up the dirt and to give the opportunity for those seeds to go in. I have to literally destroy anything that's left in order to plant the new seeds. God cannot be mocked. Every man reaps what he sows. Our house is fine, but there are so many things that don't take a lot of time that I just neglect. You've probably seen or heard how much I hate folding laundry, but then I get mad at my past self because we have so much laundry that I'm pulling it out of the dryer and it takes me 2 hours to fold all the laundry. Want to know what I did at 3:00 this morning? I folded the laundry. The laundry is all done for the week now, and it's all there and put away. It took me less than an hour because I had actually folded other stuff other days this weekend. Took 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. But there's so many times where I get overwhelmed by the state of where things are. Then it becomes a big thing that I have to undo. And I get mad at myself for letting it get to that point. And it never gets to that point with just, doesn't happen immediately. It's a series of decisions and pushing off the thing that I know that I should do and need to do and want to do and is aligned with the person I'm trying to be, and I push it off. I make a decision to not do the thing that I say that I want to do and that is good for me. Yesterday we went to a barbecue cookout thing at some friends of ours. And these are two of our dearest friends in the world. They are auntie and uncle to our kids. They have been, but it'd be fine. They have been some of our dearest friends and our most consistent friends during the last 5 years of parenthood. And it was at their house, and they invited a lot of people, all of whom are from our church that we know and are friendly with. But they live a few towns over from us. It's like 35 minutes or so to get to 35 minutes to get to their house. But we go to church kind of in the middle together. It's this church that we've been a part of for 15 years. But they all live in this town, Dover, and they are all part of a community group and a homeschool co-op because the kids are all just a little bit older than our kids. Like Levi's on the young end and the twins are on the really young end, like there's maybe one or two other kids around that age, but they have older siblings that kind of carry them a little bit. But they're all the kids are super familiar with each other. And obviously all the other people are very close with each other because they see each other more frequently. They have the community group and they do different things because they live in the same town. It's easier for them to just be like, hey, we'll pop over, we'll be there in 5 minutes sort of thing. For us to go, it's a little bit more of an endeavor. But again, even just in that moment right there, the way that I just phrased it, I'm realizing, and I realized yesterday, that we have, and I have opted out of doing a lot of things with our family because they might be hard. Because the kids might get emotional, because of naps or meals or whatever it is. And I think that those are reasons, and I can understand my logic for those things. Like, hey, we want to make sure that everybody gets in bed at a decent time, whatever it is. But yesterday brought into very, very clear vision of what the cost of those decisions has been. And that is, for us, a community that we used to really have a close one of friends and that basically were family. And again, it doesn't mean that those people are not still very close in our lives, but it's harder to get together. Some of them have moved. We've all moved, actually. We all used to live 10 minutes away from each other, and now we live several states away. And so it's a little bit harder to get together. We've all had kids, and so that adds layers of complexity. It doesn't mean that they're excuses, but it's layers of complexity. And so in the span of time when we had kids, plus COVID, plus moving, all of that kind of happened in an 18-month span. Like, we had Levi in April of 2020. We had the twins in November of 2021. We moved into our house October of 2021, and that was COVID, right? That was the 2 years of really COVID, was 2020 to early 2022. And so in the midst of all of that, communities formed that we weren't necessarily part of, and that we did not go out of our way to participate in. And so now that community has grown. And those kids, so that's for Megan and I, the adults, the relationships there, we can have very pleasant conversations with these people, but I don't really know much of what's happening in their life, and they don't really know too much of what's happening in mine, but we share a lot of common things. We can have a conversation, but it's not to the depth that maybe you might like. And so we have fewer of those friendships. We have less of that community. And this is something that we're mourning, because the community that we used to have in our late 20s doesn't exist anymore. And we're also seeing it very clearly happen in front of us for friends of ours, and one that we probably could have been a part of if we had chosen to do a hard thing, or even if it hadn't been that one, we could have maybe forged another one. But I also, and this is where I woke up with this morning, and this is what I I couldn't go back to sleep with. And this is very raw and new for me, but I know it's true. I watched our kids yesterday, and again, they were on maybe the younger end, but I watched our kids because part of it is because they aren't as comfortable with this other group of friends that see each other more frequently, but they could have opted into playing with these other kids. There were plenty of kids their age that they could have done. Be clingy to each other and to us. And in some ways, I'm glad that that we are a safe place for them. But it was a moment for me where I felt really convicted as a father and as a husband that I don't think that I have given my kids the best opportunities to grow in their friendships and their ability to create friendships with other kids because we have been more insular. We have opted to stay at home. We have opted to go to family where they are the only kids. Or if we have gotten together with kids, it has been on in a smaller setting where it's our kids and one other family. And those kids are our friends' kids. As opposed to this is where I like going out of our way to go to the birthday parties of their classmates, even though we will know nobody there. It doesn't mean that we haven't gone to any, but we haven't made it the same level of priority that we have made going to our friends' kids' stuff or the things that we wanted to do. And as a result, I think their friendships and relationships are dependent on us in a lot of ways. And the places in which they are forced to make friends with people that we are not introducing them to, school, or the environments such as birthday parties with those school friends, we have not intentionally put ourselves into those situations. So as a result, when they get into those situations, they're unfamiliar with them. And so I yesterday was frustrated and jealous of the other parents in this group who could sit and just hang out and chat with each other. And even if I had wanted to, even if Megan and I had wanted to say, you know what? We're not often in this group, but we're here now. This is an opportunity. Let's try to dive into these relationships and try to forge these relationships with these other adults that we know and like and are friendly with, but haven't gotten to a depth with. There's no way that we could have done it because our kids were on top of us, as opposed to the other parents who were there, whose kids were able to just go play and they just were able to play with each other because their kids were used to it and our kids weren't, because they had sown the seeds for years of you learn how to play with in uncomfortable situations, and you make friends and you develop relationships and you go do the thing. And so they reaped the rewards. And we have not sown the seeds. I have not led our family. I have abdicated the responsibility to lead our family into the spot where our kids are comfortable to go off in that situation, that they know that we're here. We know that they're there, that they know that we are here for them, but they feel comfortable to at least go try. And so my son is going into kindergarten next year. And again, I don't think that I've neglected them or anything like that, but I know that I have not given them opportunities that they deserve. And it's a thing for me where it feels extreme to say it, but I also feel convicted that this is very possibly at least partly true, that I have robbed them of part of their childhood that they could have had because I opted for my own comfort several times. That really sucks to say. Our yard is in the spot that it is because I opted for my own comfort. My body is in the place that it is because I opted for my own comfort. But my relationship and my kids' ability to process their own emotions is the way that it is because I have opted for my own feelings and what I felt like I needed over what was best. And again, I think that this is the human condition. I'm not expecting perfection of myself. And I shared this with Megan to some degree, not super articulate this morning. And she said to me, as she does as an incredible wife, like, know that I don't think that about you. I don't think that you've let us down, but I told her that while I appreciate that, I know it's true. And I don't think that I've done it as a blanket statement. I don't think that I've let my kids down as a blanket statement. I don't think I've been a bad father as a blanket statement, or a hypocrite as a coach, or a bad homeowner. Like, I don't think that these are character flaws inherently. But I think that these are areas where my own character flaws and I think the universal character flaw of we often choose comfort. We choose what's comfortable, convenient, easy, and feels good at the time. That's our default. I think that's true for everybody. We have to fight against that human nature. That's the human nature that led us to sin, that leads to all sin. When we choose comfort, convenience, what's easy, and what feels good at the time. But do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. Every man reaps what he sows. And so I find myself now at a point where I'm faced with the harvest of what I have sown. And it's not what I might like it to be. And so I hope to leave this on, again, with the same goal that I've had from the beginning of this podcast. In the very first episode of this podcast, I came on and I said to take imperfect action. I recorded this podcast on Zoom. I now use a program called Riverside. I did it with my AirPods. I propped my laptop up on several books. And again, this is not the most professional thing, but I have a light now. I have a professional microphone. I have good headphones. My computer is propped up at the appropriate height by a computer proper thing. I don't know what to call this. And I've done 100 episodes over 2.5 years. A little bit less than 2.5 years. More than 2. I don't remember when I first episode. But the first episode I did was to take imperfect action, because I started and I didn't know what it was going to be. And so I think when we get into these spots where we feel like the reaping of what we have sown is not what we would have liked, we need to be honest with ourselves and to look in the mirror. It would be very easy, and I felt this yesterday. I just was feeling sorry for myself when we left the barbecue, and we left after like less than 2 hours because the kids were emotional and we were like, what's even the point? We can't even, and we just felt that which we were lacking. And again, we chose comfort, and I'm not saying it was necessarily the wrong decision, but it was very apparent that like we just couldn't do it. And with the current level of skill that we had, we could not do it. Or we opted out of it. And I need to wrestle with whether or not we ought to have stayed or not, but that doesn't make a difference. But on the way back, I mourned. And I felt bad for myself. I felt bad for us. I was like, why haven't they invited us into this? Why haven't we been, invited into this community a little bit more? And it's easy to pass the buck a little bit to other people. And it was last night and this morning, early morning, when I was lying awake in bed, when this verse came to my head, and I remembered the reality that this is a product of my own doing. I'm here because of what I did or did not do. And there are certainly circumstances that led to those decisions. But it is my responsibility. And so the only way to change or shift our current reality with any of these things is to take responsibility and to try to sow new seed. And so today, I'm trying to do that. I'm letting today be the first day toward that, where I folded the laundry and I did a workout. I recorded this podcast, and I'm about to go do some yard work. Because do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. Every man reaps what he sows. It's our responsibility. The circumstances are the circumstances. But we get to choose our actions at every moment of every day. We get to decide whether or not those actions, even if we don't know what they are aligned with the person that we're trying to be or not. Will we choose what is comfortable, convenient, easy, feels good at the time? Or will we choose to do the hard thing, to take the imperfect action? Because it's not... The final reminder that I'm getting for myself in this moment is this. I came on and I said to take imperfect action. And I struggled in the early parts of this podcast to be consistent. I struggled to know what this podcast was going to be about. I struggled to even know if I was going to do it. And I took a several month break from recording this podcast in the early days. And now, I'm 100 episodes in. That came from consistently taking imperfect action. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you listening. This is far and away the longest solo episode I've ever done. I don't know if I will do another for a long time or ever again. But if you've made it this far, I appreciate you listening. If you've made it this far, I would love to hear from you. If you've been listening for a while, how long, and how I can make these next 100 episodes as valuable as possible for you. Because that is my goal. But thank you for listening. Please do the things that you do. Leave a review. Leave a comment. Share it. Rate it. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. But I appreciate you listening. Here's to the next 100. Talk to you next time.